The United States is taking the fight to the drug cartels. Yet, the actions being taken under the banner of this new counter-narcotics crusade bear the hallmarks of something far more significant. This isn't just about stopping drugs, it's about projecting power in a way that feels eerily familiar to the lead-ups to other foreign interventions. The truth is there for those willing to look. The opening salvo in this undeclared conflict came on September 2nd, 2025. In a statement from the White House, President Trump announced that the United States military had conducted a drone strike on a vessel in the southern Caribbean. All 11 people aboard were killed. The official justification was swift and unequivocal. The boat was allegedly operated by the notorious Tren de Aragua gang and was transporting a shipment of illicit drugs. It was presented as a clean, decisive victory in the newly intensified war on drugs. However, in the days and weeks that followed, the administration has failed to produce a single piece of evidence to corroborate these claims. No photos of the alleged narcotics, no intelligence intercepts, nothing to prove the identities of the deceased. The narrative of a simple, justified strike began to crumble almost immediately as more disturbing details emerged from sources with knowledge of the operation. It appears the initial drone attack did not sink the vessel or kill everyone on board. The boat, damaged but still afloat, reportedly turned and began heading back toward the Venezuelan coast. It was at this point that it was subjected to a second and then a third, and possibly more strikes until it was utterly destroyed and all survivors were eliminated. This detail transforms the incident from a supposed counter-narcotics interdiction into something that looks much more like a deliberate, systematic execution of individuals who may have been trying to flee. The official story, thin from the start, now appears to be a carefully constructed facade designed to obscure a brutal reality. The claim that the individuals on board were members of a dangerous gang remains just that, a claim. Without evidence, the public is left to grapple with the possibility that the United States military, acting on secret orders, killed 11 people who may have been nothing more than fishermen or civilian mariners. The drone strike did not happen in a vacuum. It was the lethal focal point of a massive and ongoing United States military deployment in the Caribbean, a mobilization that began in late August 2025. The scale of this operation is staggering and far exceeds what would typically be required for counter-drug patrols. According to public reports, the Pentagon has moved at least 8 warships, including 3 guided missile destroyers, into the waters off Venezuela's coast. Accompanying this naval force is a submarine and a contingent of approximately 4,000 Marines and sailors, an amphibious force capable of a wide range of offensive operations. This is not a Coast Guard action. This is the positioning of a war-ready expeditionary force. The buildup is not limited to the sea. The Trump administration also ordered a squadron of 10 F-35 fighter jets, some of the most advanced combat aircraft in the United States arsenal, to Puerto Rico in mid-September. The official justification for this move was, once again, to support counter-drug operations. However, the F-35 is a stealth multi-role combat aircraft designed for air superiority and strike missions against sophisticated air defenses. Using it for spotting go-fast boats carrying cocaine is like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. Its presence signals a readiness for a much more serious military conflict, one that could involve striking targets deep inside Venezuelan territory. This significant concentration of military hardware is the direct result of the secret directive signed by President Trump in July. That order, which designated certain drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, effectively granted the Pentagon the authority to treat the Caribbean as a battlefield. The deployment is not a deterrent in the traditional sense. It is an active and aggressive posture. The presence of thousands of Marines on amphibious assault ships, supported by destroyers and stealth fighters, sends an unmistakable message to Caracas. The United States is prepared, and perhaps even eager, to use overwhelming military force. The administration has assembled a powerful military armada on the doorstep of a sovereign nation. From Caracas, the view of the American military buildup is unambiguous. It is a hostile act of aggression and a prelude to an invasion. The Venezuelan government has vehemently denied the United States' claims about the targeted boats and has framed the entire operation as a desperate continuation of Washington's failed policy of regime change. Foreign Minister Ivan Gil accused the United States of manufacturing an incident to justify a military escalation in the Caribbean. He pointed to a separate event on September 13th where he claimed a United States Navy destroyer illegally boarded a Venezuelan tuna boat in Venezuelan waters, with 18 armed personnel remaining on the vessel for 8 hours before finally departing. This alleged boarding incident, which the United States has not publicly addressed, is seen by Venezuela as a clear provocation. Gil asserted that the American forces were actively seeking a confrontation that would provide a casus belli, a reason to launch a larger attack. In response to the perceived threat, Venezuela has initiated a significant mobilization of its own forces. President Maduro announced plans to deploy more than 4.5 million members of the Bolivarian militia, a civilian reserve force, to defend strategic points across the country. Furthermore, Venezuela's defense minister declared the deployment of significant drone capabilities and ramped up naval patrols along its Caribbean coast, a direct answer to the presence of the United States destroyers and Marine Expeditionary Unit. The government is attempting to project an image of strength and national unity in the face of external aggression. They are preparing for a potential conflict. Any hope that the initial drone strike was an isolated incident or that international condemnation might lead to de-escalation was shattered on September 15th. President Trump announced a second United States strike that morning on another Venezuelan boat. This attack killed 3 people whom the president, without offering any proof, labeled as confirmed narco-terrorists. Just as with the first strike, no evidence was provided to the public. No proof the vessel was carrying drugs, no proof the individuals were involved in criminal activity. The pattern was clear, a new norm of extrajudicial killing in the Caribbean justified by unilateral declarations and shrouded in secrecy. The announcement came not from the White House or Pentagon, but from the President's Truth Social post. Be warned, if you are transporting drugs that can kill Americans, we are hunting you.
Narcotics in Venezuela. Narcotics in Venezuela. President Maduro in Venezuela says that you're getting ready to invade his country. What is his message to him?
Well, I would say this right away. Stop sending Tren de Aragua into the United States. Stop sending drugs into the United States. We knocked off actually 3 boats, not 2, but you saw 2. And the problem is there are very few boats out in the water. There are not a lot of boats out in the water. I can't imagine why. Not even fishing boats. There's nobody. Nobody wants to go take a fish. So it's one of those things. But I would say to him very strongly, stop sending people from your prisons into our country. They're sending their prisoners. They've done that already. So the numbers just came out. Another month with 0 people getting into our country. And these are figures, John, with people like you that would like me to do badly. Nobody has ever done on the border like I've done.
This bypassed traditional channels and delivered a stark, personalized ultimatum. It reframed operations as a personal crusade, not state policy under legal and diplomatic norms. The rhetoric was incendiary, designed to project strength and ruthlessness while inflaming a volatile situation. The decision to conduct a second strike and announce it this way is a deliberate doubling down on the controversial new doctrine, targeted killings becoming a standard tool in the theater of operations. The speed between strikes suggests a pre-planned campaign. The United States military is not patrolling. It is actively hunting. That escalation raises the risk of miscalculation and a wider war with potentially catastrophic consequences for the entire region. Beyond the smoke and fire of the drone strikes lies a profound legal and moral debate. The Trump administration's actions in the Caribbean raise serious questions about their compliance with both the United States and international law. By designating drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, and using that designation to justify military force, the White House is operating in a legal gray area of its own creation. Under international law, the use of lethal force is typically restricted to armed conflict against clearly defined combatants. Drug traffickers, while criminals, are not combatants in a war. They are civilians, and targeting them with military weapons outside of a declared war zone is widely considered an extrajudicial killing. The legal framework for maritime law enforcement is well established and does not include missile strikes from unmanned drones. The United States Coast Guard, the agency traditionally responsible for counter-drug operations at sea, operates under strict rules of engagement. These rules require a multi-step process of escalation, hailing a vessel, firing warning shots, using disabling fire on engines, resorting to lethal force only as a last resort, in cases of clear self-defense or violent resistance. The drone strikes completely bypass this established legal process, opting instead for immediate, overwhelming, and lethal force from a remote location, leaving no room for warning, surrender, or verification. Senator Rand Paul, a frequent critic of executive overreach, highlighted this very point. He publicly condemned the drone attacks, stating they directly defied the established Coast Guard rules of engagement. The administration's new doctrine effectively replaces a law enforcement model with a military assassination model. While the White House projects an image of unified resolve, significant cracks have appeared in the official narrative, with dissent emerging from surprising corners, including from within the Pentagon itself. A high-ranking Pentagon official, speaking on the condition of anonymity, provided a scathing assessment of the first Caribbean strike. The official described it as a criminal attack on civilians, drawing a sharp and crucial distinction that the administration has sought to erase. Drug traffickers may be criminals, the source stated, but they aren't combatants. This bombshell statement from inside the military establishment confirms the worst fears of legal experts: that the United States is now directly targeting civilians under a flimsy pretext. This internal dissent reveals a deep unease within the defense community about the legality and morality of the new policy. Senator Mark Warner, a key Democrat and member of the Gang of Eight, the small group of congressional leaders who are supposed to be briefed, expressed grave concerns. Warner stated he was worried about putting American sailors in harm's way by violating international law. Warner declared that neither he nor the entire Senate Intelligence Committee had been briefed on the operation before it took place, a stunning breakdown of executive branch oversight. The abrupt cancellation of a bipartisan briefing on the matter only reinforces this conclusion. The Trump administration's aggressive posture in the Caribbean has not been well received by its neighbors in Latin America, met with widespread condemnation and alarm, even from countries that are not traditional allies of Venezuela. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva sharply criticized the United States naval deployment. He warned it could undermine regional peace. He expressed deep concern over the concentration of United States forces, calling it a possible prelude to an attack on Venezuela. Colombia reacted even more forcefully. Colombian President Gustavo Petro called the killings on the Venezuelan boat murder. That accusation shows growing regional sentiment against U.S. intervention. The United States is finding itself increasingly isolated in its own hemisphere. These criticisms from Brazil and Colombia reflect a broad regional consensus. For decades, Latin American nations have sought to be a zone of peace, free from great power conflict. The U.S. military presence is seen as a direct threat to that ambition. Instead of a partner in security, the U.S. is seen as importing conflict and instability. Diplomatic blowback is undermining U.S. influence and pushing regional powers together. Even global powers weighed in. Russia's foreign ministry called the strike absolutely unacceptable, but condemnation from democratic powers like Brazil and Colombia is more significant. It shows the administration's narco-terrorist justification has failed to convince key observers. The U.S. is viewed not as a righteous crusader, but as an aggressor destabilizing the region. The escalating military action in the Caribbean has triggered a constitutional crisis at home, exposing a blatant disregard for congressional oversight by the Trump administration. Representative Ilhan Omar introduced a War Powers Resolution aimed at forcing an end to the administration's military strikes in the Caribbean. A War Powers Resolution is a powerful legislative tool designed to reassert Congress's role in decisions about war, decisions about peace. As the United States military continues its hunt in the Caribbean, we are on the brink of a wider conflict with a host of critical questions that the administration refuses to answer. Who were the 14 people killed in the 2 drone strikes? The White House has labeled them narco-terrorists, but has provided no evidence to support this claim. Were they truly members of a violent cartel, or were they fishermen, merchants, or simply civilians in the wrong place at the wrong time?